All right, we are continuing on. Chapter 8. It's called Hung Jury. I think it's about to hit the fan for Jack. Let's see what's happening, though. Hung Jury. Mrs. Rankin got home from work at 4:15 every day, so Jack was kind of cutting it close. He ran half a block from the bus stop, let himself in, and hung up his coat and backpack in the front closet. He could tell by sniffing that his mom wasn't home yet and the dinner hadn't even been started. Jack dashed into the living room and struck up a deal with his little sister. "Listen, Lois, don't tell Mom I got home so late today, okay? And don't tell her I forgot to call Mrs. Gennaro. It's worth $1 if you keep your mouth shut, okay?" If Jack missed the bus, he was supposed to call their neighbor so she can keep a lookout for Lois. His sister didn't take the eyes off the TV. She asked, "Is it worth $1.50?" Lois was in 3rd grade. She thought her parents made too big a deal about her life after school. But now and then, it was useful, and just to have everyone worry about her. Jack gritted his teeth. Fine, $1.50. He didn't have time to haggle, and he didn't need another issue. Not right now. Not just before a trial. A minute later, the station wagon pulled into the driveway. A door slammed at the garage on the alley, and Mom was at the kitchen door, her huge purse over one arm and a bag of groceries in the other. Jack was down to the steps in no time, being helpful. Like he knew he was going to be in trouble. You guys ever do that? Where you're sitting there and all of a sudden you know you're going to be in trouble, and then all of a sudden, "Oh, let me help you with this." Parents know. We always know. Fair warning. "Thanks, Jackie. Put the ice cream in the freezer right away, would you? And the milk needs to be put away too." His mom came up the stairs behind him, laid her coat over the back of the chair, and immediately pulled out a box of macaroni. "Put some water on to boil, will you, Jack? Use the deep saucepan." Macaroni and cheese tonight?" asked Jack, reaching into the cabinet below the stove for a pan. His mom nodded. "Yup." Then she added a smile. "How'd you guess?" Jack grinned. "Just a genius." Things were going well. A little helpfulness and a little humor. Jack knew all about timing. In a case like this, timing was everything. Now was the real moment, because that first real pause in the flow, his mom asked the dreaded question, "What happened at school today?" He had to tell her before she asked, so it wouldn't look like he'd been trying to hold something back. A point for helpfulness, a point for cheerfulness, and a point for being honest about bad news. Jack needed all the points he could get. Mrs. Rankin sat down at the table with her recipe box, looking for her old baked macaroni and cheese recipe. Jack took notice. Sitting down is it's more relaxed. Jack quickly slipped up into the chair next to her and said, "Mom, I got in some trouble at school today. I got caught sticking some gum on the bottom of a desk. I know it was wrong, and I'm being punished for it. I've got a note for you and Dad from the vice principal." He handed the note. One clean, smooth action, a brief introduction, a complete confession, a dash of sorrow, and a short explanation. Jack hoped that his opening remarks would lessen the impact of Mr. Ackerby's note. The man had only taken about a minute to write it. How bad could it be? Lois had a built-in radar for drama. The show in the kitchen was a lot better than the one on TV. She crept silently to the doorway behind her mom and peered around the corner at Jack. She made a face and shook her finger at him, as if she were saying, "Naughty, naughty, naughty." Jack glared at her. But Lois stayed put, a smug little smile on her face. Mrs. Rankin broke the seal on the envelope. It was time for Exhibit A, the note. Jack thought the jury would be sympathetic to his case. He was hoping he would get time off for good behavior. But Jack had underestimated Mr. Ackerby's talents as a writer. As Mrs. Rankin scanned the note with her lips pressed together into a thin line and her eyes narrowed, "Not good." Then she read Exhibit A out loud. This is what Mr. Ackerby wrote them. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Rankin, I'm sorry to report that your son Jack did his best to ruin a desk today. In a deliberate act of vandalism, he completely fouled the underside of a folding desk during his music class. The quantity of bubblegum he applied can only be described as enormous. If you guys remember, it was like 20 some odd pieces of gum. That's a lot. His action required forethought and planning. It seems like an angry gesture to me. Yet when I asked him why he did it, he did not answer me. I'll alert our counseling staff to this incident. In the meantime, Jack will be required to stay after school 1 hour each day for the next 3 weeks. He'll be helping our custodial staff clean gum off furniture throughout the school. Please call if you wish to discuss this matter further. Sincerely, Mr. Ronald Ackerby, Vice Principal, Huntington Middle School. Helen Rankin did not explode. It took some doing, but she was too smart to get angry. Not about this. Anger would be the wrong response. Helen wasn't angry because she knew something that Mr. Ackerby didn't. At least, not yet. She knew that the custodial staff was headed up by Jack's dad, John Rankin. She also knew that she also knew this stunt was not about destroying property, and she also knew that Jack hadn't done this just for kicks. There was something else going on. Helen Rankin had seen this coming, and here it was. Jack was trying to get some clues from his mom's face after she read the note out loud. It was a tough call. Angry? Not quite. Sad? Yeah, there was some sadness. But there was a whole bunch of other stuff going on that Jack couldn't quite pin down. He couldn't tell what was going to happen. Helen Rankin spoke quietly, and all she said was, "Jack, I'm going to have a talk with your dad." The dreaded dad talk. "You should go to your room and do homework until I call you for dinner." Lois vanished from the doorway. Jack said, "Okay, Mom." He pushed his hair back from the table, stood up, and walked out to the front closet to get his backpack. It was the old go wait in your room situation. No decision, a hung jury. Which means it was kind of undecided about what was going to happen until Dad got home. He headed up the stairs. As Jack passed Lois's room, she opened her door 6 inches, smiled sweetly, and stuck out her hand. Jack thought, here I am, waiting on death row, and she wants her stinking $1.50? But there was something on Lois's palm. She batted her eyelashes, nodded down at her hand, and whispered, "Hey, Jack, want a piece of gum?" Oh, younger siblings are a kick in the pants. Lois got the door shut and locked just in time as Jack put his face to the door and hissed, "You're dead meat, funny girl." Lois giggled and said, "I think I shall need $2. Yes, $2 will be enough. For now, but no coins. Nice, crisp bills, please." She's pretty smart for a 3rd grader. Jack kicked the bottom of her door and went back down the hallway to his cell. Chapter 9. Boy Territory. Jack's mom had known her husband since they went to Huntington High School together. Helen Parkman had first met John Rankin when he was in the 11th grade, and she was in 9th. She'd watched him catching touchdown passes for the Huntington Heralds during Friday night football games. She'd seen him at dances and with his girlfriend, a cheerleader. She'd seen him washing cars on Saturday at his dad's used car lot. Helen Parkman had watched John Rankin from a distance. They knew each other, but not that they had never really been friends, not back then. John's family had some money and they lived on the nicer side of town. Helen's family didn't. It was simple as that. John Rankin was the golden boy, one of those kids most likely to succeed. Then one day in the spring of 1967, just 2 months before his high school graduation, John Rankin disappeared. He joined the Army. It made quite a stir in the Huntington High School. A lot of boys were getting drafted in the Army because it was the middle of the Vietnam War. But no one was signing up for military service on purpose. Not the infantry. Not a 4-year hitch. John had just turned 18 and had been accepted to a good college, and he might not have to go into the service at all. There were savage pictures of the war on the evening news every single day. It seemed like you'd have to be crazy to join the Army at that time. It was a mystery back then. Why did he leave? When did he come back? And how did he end up as a janitor at the high school? Now, Helen Rankin, they got married. She went from her previous name to Rankin. Knew all the hows and the whens and the whys. And now she understood. And it all made perfect sense in the flow of her husband's life in the long view. But how could she help an 11-year-old understand all that? How could she help her husband not feel hurt to learn that Jack was embarrassed, ashamed, to have his classmates know that his father was the school janitor? Helen Rankin was a strong person. She'd taken courses at the local junior college, and now she worked as a paralegal secretary for the town government. She had the respect of her co-workers and her boss. She took good care of her kids, and she and her husband made a good home for their family. The only thing that made Helen feel helpless was this: being caught between her husband and her son. She had a name for the feeling. Helen Rankin was lost in boy territory. When John Rankin's pickup pulled in the driveway at 5:45, 5:45, everybody in the house heard it. For Jack, it meant the rest of his jury had arrived. For his sister, it meant there was going to be way more drama and more adventures and spying. For his mom, it meant that a delicate balancing act was about to begin. Helen Rankin looked through the window over the sink. John didn't get out of his truck right away, but when he did, he looked tired. She met him at the back door with a hug and a kiss. He smiled at her and held her at an arm's length. "So how's my best girl?" She smiled and back and said, "I've been better. I hear from Mr. Ackerby that you've got a new assistant for the next 3 weeks." Helen hadn't been planning on bringing it up so soon, but it seemed the most honest thing to do. No sense in pretending they weren't both thinking about it. Following his wife up the steps to the kitchen, John said, "That's a fact. Jack cleaning the desk. Tongue-tied. Jack cleaned the desk that he gummed up today. Took him almost an hour, but he did a pretty good job. Of course, the shop's a wreck, and I hate to think what his clothes are like. I've never seen such a mess." John pulled out a chair and straddled it, his elbows in the back seat. Helen started peeling carrots in the sink. She asked, "Any idea why he did it?" John pulled his note from Mr. Ackerby out of his shirt pocket and tapped it onto the chair back. "Well, Vice Principal says it was just vandalism, but I think there's more to it, don't you? And you know what? I helped Ackerby plan and organize the move all last summer, so you think you can put 2 and 2 together. I don't think that this guy has it figured out that Jack's my son." Helen kept peeling carrots, but turned and nodded toward the table. "I'm sure he doesn't know yet. But that's the note to the parents." Helen went to the refrigerator and got out a head of lettuce, glancing at John's face as he opened the second letter and started to read. Turning back to the sink, she kept her voice and even asked, "What do you think? Is Mr. Ackerby right? Do you think Jack was angry?" John Rankin didn't answer right away. Helen wasn't sure what was coming. This was boy territory. John started slowly. "Here's how I see it. We know Jack had to do it on purpose, and he knew that a messy desk would end up down in my shop. So I'm guessing that Jack's mad at me. It's been like he's wanted nothing to do with me for a long time. He hasn't said a word to me at school so far, at least not until last Monday." Then John and Helen had start over. Man, I'm having a hard time today. Then John told Helen about cleaning up the floor, saying, "Hi, Jack," in his math class, and then about the collision in the hallway. It was the perfect opening, Helen said. "John, I think Jack's just really embarrassed by that. I think this solves the mystery." John spoke slowly. "I know he was embarrassed by the fall in the hallway, but how was he embarrassed about me, right?" Helen nodded. There was an awkward silence. John said, "Well, it makes sense. Smart, good-looking kid. His old man's the janitor." Another silence. Then John said, "And thanks to Ackerby now, Jack's the janitor too. Junior janitor, the little janitor. He's really gonna hate me now." Helen turned around and said, "It'll all work out. You know Jack could never hate you, John." John shook his head. "Yeah, you'd maybe think different if you could see what he did to that desk." Well, with some bitterness in his voice, he added, "Of course, Jack doesn't stop and remember that he's never gone to bed hungry in his life, and when he needs a new pair of shoes, there they are, just like magic. He's happy to have the money I've been making cleaning up after people, isn't he?" Jack stood up swiftly and walked to the side window. After a minute, he said, "But there's no use to getting mad about it. I just wish I knew what to do." Helen wished the same thing. She said, "Well, you're going to have to see a lot more of each other during the next 3 weeks. It'll work out, right?" "I mean, it has to." John Rankin hoped that she was right. Chapter 10. Rumors. Jack couldn't believe it. Dinner was a breeze. No yelling, no angry silences. His dad seemed a little quieter than usual, but that was about it. And of course, Jack kept quiet too. There was some chit-chat about school assignments and grades, and Mom had some news about Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob driving up from Des Moines to visit at Thanksgiving. Ordinary dinner talk, with Mom doing most of the talking. Lois was kind of disappointed. She had been hoping for fireworks, a major scene with red faces and everybody spitting mad. Just once, she wanted to see the big family blow up, with Jack as the target, of course. She stabbed her fork into the plate, the last piece of macaroni, ate it, drained her milk glass, and asked to be excused from the table. As bedtime approached, Jack took inventory. He wasn't grounded. He still had full phone privileges. His allowance was intact. Jack was pretty sure he could even get away without paying Lois her hush money. $2. It was almost like nothing had happened. Jack was expecting a long, serious talk at bedtime, but that didn't happen either. Mom said she was sure he had learned his lesson, and Jack said he was sure he had too. She kissed him on the forehead, tucked the covers around him, and said, "Sweet dreams." Shut the door. Down the hall, Jack heard his dad open Lois's door and say, "Good night, sweetheart." And he heard Lois say, "Good night, Daddy." "Little Miss Perfect," Jack muttered. And then Jack heard his dad's footsteps come towards his door. He thought, "Oh boy, here it comes." He braced himself and quickly decided to pretend he was asleep. The footsteps stopped. Then they began again. His dad turned around. Jack listened until his dad started down the stairs. "Whew, that's fine by me," Jack said aloud to himself. "The last thing I need is a little sermon from Broom King." So the public part of Jack's long Monday ended, but Jack's private day wasn't over. He lay awake for almost an hour. Tuesday was coming. Jack looked down at his alarm clock. The bus would arrive at the corner in exactly 10 hours and 12 minutes. No, 11 minutes. On Tuesday, he'd have to go back to school. Back to the scene of the crime. Tuesday morning came right on schedule. The bus ride was uneventful, which was good. Jack needed to be on time so he can get rid of his letter that his mom and dad signed. He had to get it back to Mr. Ackerby. Jack didn't go to his locker. He went right to the office, arriving there just as the 6th grade buses were pulling up at the curb on Main Street. Jack chose that moment on purpose. He knew that Mr. Ackerby always met the morning buses out front. He walked up to the school's secretary desk and said, "Excuse me? Mr. Ackerby said I had to bring this letter back to him." Mrs. Carter looked up from her computer screen, and her eyes flickered as she recognized him. "Oh, yes, Jack Rankin." Jack blushed a little. She looked him in the face, trying to connect the story she'd heard with the polite young man standing in front of her desk. He certainly didn't look like a troublemaker to her. Still, she thought, looks can be deceiving. Mrs. Carter held out her hand. "Mr. Ackerby's not here right now, but leave it with me and I'll make sure he gets it." Jack handed it to her with a polite smile, said thank you, and left. Easy as pie. Jack had passed the note return test with flying colors. It wasn't that he was afraid to meet up with Mr. Ackerby again. Jack just didn't see what good it would do. They would meet again, guaranteed, and whenever that would be soon enough for Jack. School is like a small town. Even ordinary news travels fast. But the really juicy story that involves crime and punishment easily hits the speed of 100 or 200 mouths an hour. By 8:45 on Tuesday morning, the legend of Jack the Gummer was hitting the warp speed. Jack's best friend Pete Ramsey, the spelling of their last names that kept them sitting next to each other almost every year since kindergarten. This year, they had the same homeroom, their lockers were side by side. Jack had just pulled open the metal door when he noticed Pete. Pete had recently started wearing cologne. Why? Girls, maybe? Pete had recently started wearing cologne, and Jack could always tell when he was in the area. Today, Pete was also chewing gum. Juicy fruit, Jack said to himself. It's a smell of juicy fruit. Lasts about 10 seconds, then it goes away. Without looking around, Jack said, "Hi, Pete." There was no answer. Jack turned and Pete was there. But he was just staring at him, his mouth open, his gum on his tongue. Pete said, "What are you doing here?" Standing at my locker?" asked Jack. "Is that the answer? Do I win a big prize?" Pete was serious. "I thought you got expelled." "Expelled? For what?" "For swearing at Mr. Pike during chorus and then sticking gum all over Mr. Ackerby's desk." Did you call Mr. Pike names or what?" "It's everywhere." "Who told you all that?" Pete said, "I heard it waiting in line down to the school store." "Well, it's not true," said Jack. "All I did was stick a bunch of gum on the bottom of a folding desk." "One desk! I got caught and now I have to stay and clean up all the gum after school. That's all." Pete said, "No swearing?" "None," said Jack. "No big fight with Mr. Ackerby?" Jack shook his head. "Nope. He yelled at me, and then he sent a note home to my folks, but I'm not even grounded." The facts were pretty boring, and Pete lost interest immediately. As he began to dial his combination, he shrugged. Then he said, "Hey, Little League registration is at the new high school gym on this Saturday. You gonna go?" Jack leaned against the lockers and listened to Pete. He said, "Uh-huh," and nodded at the right moments. But he was thinking about the outrageous rumors. Then, above Pete's chatter, Jack heard Luke using his big voice. Luke said, "Hey, Kirk, look who's here. It's Gumbo." Kirk Dorfman's locker was across the hall. Kirk walked over and Luke followed along. Kirk said, "Yeah, you're right, it's Gumbo, son of Scumbo, the janitor. So how's it going, Gumbo?" Pete stopped between Jack and Kirk, his shoulders square and his fists clenched. With a sneer, he said, "Hey, look, Jack. It knows how to talk. I think its name is Tommy Polo Nautica. Now run along, Tommy Polo Nautica. You might get your nice new yellow jacket all messed up." Pete was not kidding, and Kirk knew it. "Sure," said Kirk. "No problem. We're just leaving anyway, right, Luke? We want to go watch the janitor fold up the tables in the cafeteria." Luke said, "Yeah, because he's so talented, you know. See you guys later." Pete and Jack watched them until they turned the corner at the end of the hallway. "Dirtbags," said Pete. "Yeah," said Jack. "Grade A jerks. Thanks, Pete." From what Pete had said about the rumors, Jack didn't know what to expect the rest of the day. But homeroom was normal, and the morning classes were too. Every once in a while, Jack would notice a kid looking at him curiously. But when the rumor says you're expelled and you clearly are not expelled, reality usually wins. Still, as he headed up the stairs after lunch, Jack thought he saw 2 7th-grade teachers giving him weird sideways glances. Figures, he thought. Teachers gossip too. It's not true. No. Never gossip about you guys. You guys are awesome. After school, there was a note for Jack taped to the door of the supply closet in the workshop. It was from his dad. This is what it said. Jack, start on the tables and the chairs in the library today. Mrs. Stokely is usually there after school, but if she's not, you can find Lou down near the auditorium. And Arnie is sweeping on 2 and 3. I'll be fixing a toilet up on 4 if you need me. Dad. Toilets? Thought Jack. Great. My dad's now in the toilet repair business too. Jack pushed the door open and went into the supply closet. First, he got a fresh roll of paper towels. The putty knife, the solvent, and the rubber gloves were right where he had left them. Today, he planned on using those rubber gloves. Then he remembered his dad had said to use a bucket and carry stuff around. Why not? Jack thought. After all, he's the big expert. Jack turned around and looked on the other set of shelves. There were mop heads and dust mop heads, mop ringers, handle setups, big cans of liquid wax, 2-gallon bottles of ammonia, but no buckets. Jack pulled the door out of the way and found what he needed. 2 stacks of buckets, metal and plastic. Glancing up, Jack saw a gray wooden cabinet hanging on the wall. It had been hidden behind the open door. Shallower than a medicine cabinet, it only came out about 2 inches from the wall. It was almost 3 feet wide and had hinges on either side, so the doors could open out from the center. A hasp and a padlock held the cabinet door shut. It's kind of like when you go to open up maybe like a shed door. It has that little latch that goes forward and the padlock kind of hangs down, keeping it shut. That's what he's talking about. It was an unusual padlock, the old kind, round, made of solid brass with rivets and little flaps on either side of the handle that covered the keyhole. Jack pushed the door into the closet out of the way and let it shine on the lock. As he took a half step forward to get closer, Jack discovered something interesting. The old brass lock was snapped shut. I'm just looking ahead. Oh, let's do chapter 11 too. We're about halfway through the book, actually. Take a look at that. Not bad. Chapter 11, Open Sesame. An open lock is a temptation for some people. For Jack, it was more like an invitation. It wasn't like he was cracking a safe or robbing a bank. He was only interested in the lock at first. He pulled on it, and the curved shackle swung open on its pivot, sliding the shackle out of the loop of the hasp. He turned it toward the light to get a better look at the thing. Cool and heavy in his hand, it was like a work of art. Jack flipped it over and read the words engraved on the back. The Champion Lock Company. And below was the name of the patent date. 1898? It was the kind of lock that stirs the imagination. Turning back to the cabinet, Jack was all set to put back the padlock, and just as he'd found it. But almost as an afterthought, he flipped the latch off the doors and pulled both of them open at once. There was a soft jingling as the doors opened wide, and so did Jack's eyes and mouth. Keys. They were everywhere. They ran from top left to the left-hand door to the bottom right of the right-hand door. Row after row of keys. Jack had found the key safe. Almost every building has one. The cabinet held long rows of nails spaced far enough apart so the keys could hang side by side, top to bottom, without bumping. Each nail was tilted slightly upward so the keys would not fall off as the doors were opened and closed. Each nail held at least one key. Some held as many as 10 or 12 in little brass and silver stacks. On top of each pile there was a small, round identification tag. Jack's eyes roamed over the stacks of keys, reading the tags, room 227, room 228, and so on. The boys' locker room, art supply closet, craft freezer, main office, every classroom, every closet, every washroom, every office, and every desk and cabinet and cupboard in the old high school had a lock, and every lock had a key. And every key was right there, staring at Jack Rankin right in the face. His mind was reeling, and it's credit to Jack's character that he didn't immediately go on imagining some real crimes. It would have been so simple. Jack sensed this, and it made him uneasy. He was about to close the doors, but then he thought, hey, wait a second. I'm like a janitor right now, and the janitor can have any keys he wants. I'll just consider this a little present from Ackerby and dear old Dad. Stepping in closer, Jack looked over all the key tag once again. Down near the lower right-hand corner of he saw two stacks of keys side by side. One was labeled Bell Tower, and the other was labeled Steam Tunnel. For Jack, these labels didn't suggest the chance to steal something, the chance to look up answers in a teacher's textbook, the chance to mess with the principal's computer and goof up the clock in the bell system. The attraction of these particular keys was much more powerful. These keys suggested adventure. Bell Tower. No secret there. The tower on the high school ruled the Huntington skyline. And finding it would be easy. Just keep going up. But Steam Tunnel, that was different. That was a mystery. Jack thought, what the heck is a steam tunnel anyways? And where would I look for one? And if I found it, where would I go? Carefully, suddenly alert to each small sound, Jack hooked the padlock onto the belt loop of his jeans. Then he used both hands to lift the stack of tower keys off its nail. There were 7 keys in all, each one stamped with the number 501. Jack took the key off the bottom of the stack and then put the other 6 back on the board. He quickly repeated the process for the tunnel keys, taking the 5th one and replacing the remaining 4. The tunnel keys were stamped with the number 73. Stepping back with the 2 keys in his hand, Jack had scanned the rows in the cabinet. No one would be able to tell the 2 little keys were missing, not just by looking at it at least. It was like borrowing 2 pebbles from the beach. Borrowing? Jack said to himself. Not stealing. Footsteps. On the metal stairs, coming down to the shop. Jack jamming the keys back into his front pocket of his jeans. Jack closed the cabinet quickly, trying not to make anything jingle. He pulled the padlock from his belt loop and set it back in place, almost shut, just like it had been. Grabbing a plastic bucket from the stack, he bumped into the metal nails on purpose, bumped the metal pails on purpose. He tossed the can of Off-It, the stuff he used to get the gum off the desks, and the putty knife noisily into his bucket, grabbing the towels and gloves, and went out through the supply closet door, just as Arnie had reached the bottom of the stairs. "Hi, Arnie," he said, smiling. His heart was pounding. "Hey, Jack. Heard that I'd be seeing you around." Got stuck with a little project, right? You see what he did there? Because gum is sticky. Arnie was a big joker and found himself very easy to amuse. My kind of guy. He was a heavy-set guy, and going up and downstairs made Arnie's face match his red hair and freckles. Not like me. Laughing, turned himself into a shade or 2 deeper. That much red made a striking contrast to the green collar of his work shirt. Jack laughed too, mostly from relief. He was glad it hadn't been his dad coming into the shop. His dad might have noticed his uneasiness. Jack was not a really good liar, and he felt like he was telling a lie by trying to act normal as he headed toward the stairs. "That's a good one, Arnie. Yeah, I'm stuck all right. Well, gotta get to work. See ya." As Jack took the steps 2 at a time, Arnie said, "Yep, have to double your pleasure, eh, Jack?" That's an old Wrigley's spearmint gum. The green, the big red, the Wrigley's spearmint. Double your pleasure. Double. Yeah, that was the old catchphrase back then. But Jack was up the stairs and into the hallway, and Arnie was just laughing by himself. Jack headed for the library up on the 2nd floor, but gum was the last thing on his mind. Swinging the bucket of supplies in his left hand, he reached into his pocket with the other hand. Key number 501, key number 73. He wasn't Jack the Gummer. He wasn't Jack the janitor's son. He was Jack the explorer. Today the tower, tomorrow, who knows? And that's where I'm going to end off. Chapter 12 comes next time. It is called Chewology. And yeah, we are actually a little bit over halfway into the book. So we are making some great headway on this book. So yeah, I'll get this all put back together because the phone call interrupted the last video. So I'll get them all splotched and then I'll upload them on the website. So that's it. Keep reading your books. And remember, this is an AR book. So take an AR test when we're all finished up with it. Other than that, go play. Go, go, go. Go, go, go.